Horror movie fans, today I'm going to bring you a new horror movie. Today we continue with the classic horror film, Deep Hole. Anya unbuttons the woman's clothes, only to discover the woman's back is covered in mold. Beneath her skin, countless pustules slowly wriggle, as if devouring the woman's body. It turns out this place is called the Deep Hole. Back then, the Soviet Union, with all its national might, drilled the deepest scientific borehole, reaching a depth of over 12,000 meters. It penetrated the Earth's crust and entered the Moho discontinuity. It was precisely this transgression that caused anomalies from deep underground to begin spreading. Eerie sounds emanated from the well, and over 20 people even went missing. Those who were eventually found appeared to be infected with some unknown virus. To uncover the truth, superiors ordered medical expert Anya to lead a research team deep into the Deep Hole for an investigation. Soon after, Anya and her team arrived by helicopter, landing on the snowy plains of the Deep Hole. But just as they touched down, a researcher was already slowly walking towards the group, and in his hand he was holding a grenade. Even though the team tried to warn him, he remained completely unresponsive. He kept approaching them like a puppet. Left with no other choice, the squad had to open fire. However, to their astonishment, in just a few seconds, he surprisingly came back to life and stood up once more. Everyone didn't have time to dodge, and the grenade exploded with a bang. Glass shards cut Anya's cheek, but fortunately, there were no fatalities. After getting off the helicopter, Anya was curious about the recent resurrection, so she bent down to examine the body, took a sample and placed it into a test tube for subsequent laboratory analysis. What she didn't expect was that the sample in the test tube visibly and rapidly turned into a pile of dust. Meanwhile, Colonel Morozov at the base also learned that the researcher from earlier was a low-level employee from underground. It was unknown what virus he had been infected with, but he had become extremely violent and incredibly strong. It seemed as if he was using the grenade to deter more people from entering. To investigate further, Anya took blood samples from the workers underground. Meanwhile, the worker warned Anya, "Everyone down here is dead. They discovered hell. While there's still a chance, you should quickly get away from this place." These words made Anya realize that they might not be facing a common virus, but rather a terrifying entity humanity had never seen before. To obtain deeper samples, Anya decided to investigate deeper into the drill site. They also brought along the only insider, Dr. Grigoriev. He was the only one who knew the detailed information about the virus, but he was unwilling to reveal any information to Anya. He merely warned her to get what she wanted and leave quickly. He even, to seal off the virus, didn't hesitate to change the elevator password to the underground levels. If they entered it incorrectly 3 times, then the elevator would plummet to the bottom of the shaft. Finally, under Major Sergei's threat at gunpoint, Dr. Grigoriev entered the password. The elevator successfully activated. Everyone stepped inside, they buckled their seat belts, and the elevator began its descent, heading towards the employee living quarters at 6,000 meters. However, during the descent, the elevator's braking system malfunctioned, sending it rapidly plummeting downwards. Due to the intense feeling of weightlessness, everyone gradually began to lose consciousness. Only Dr. Grigoriev remained calm as he slowly put on his oxygen mask. Eventually, the elevator's brakes kicked back in, and it came to a slow crawl before stopping at 6,000 meters. Thanks to the oxygen mask, Dr. Grigoriev didn't pass out. He snatched the elevator key before the others woke up and vanished without a trace. By the time the others regained consciousness, Colonel Morozov realized the passcode was just for show. The only thing that could actually start the elevator was the key that Dr. Grigoriev had taken with him. Pyotr, who was with them, told the group that their current location was the staff living quarters at 6,000 meters. If they wanted to go deeper to 12,000 meters, they would have to take a second elevator. Since the second elevator hadn't been activated yet, it meant Dr. Grigoriev was still on this level. The soldiers then began searching every room, and sure enough, they found 2 employees. They were Dr. Kira and the engineer, Nikolai. Both claimed they hadn't seen Dr. Grigoriev and were just waiting there to be evacuated. Meanwhile, Anya collected blood samples from both of them and found that they weren't infected. This discovery left Anya feeling very confused. Anya hurriedly asked the colonel about his real purpose for being there.
There are no samples and no infected here. How the hell are we going to get out?
We'll get everything under control. Mind your own business.
Clearly, the Colonel must have another agenda. He was unwilling to reveal anything to Anya. However, as soon as Colonel Morozov left, Dr. Grigoriev appeared behind her. He told Anya to take everyone and get back to the surface immediately. They could climb up through the mineshaft walkway. He urged her to save them while there was still a chance. But Anya had no idea what Dr. Grigoriev was so afraid of. She quickly called out for the others to come over.
People should always be a priority.
Suddenly, a soldier opened fire and wounded Dr. Grigoriev. The elevator doors slammed shut instantly. Dr. Grigoriev took elevator number 2. It plummeted toward the 12,000-meter mark. To catch Dr. Grigoriev and uncover the truth behind it all, Colonel Morozov led the team to put on heat-resistant suits. They prepared to chase him down through the mineshaft walkway. However, just as they opened the entrance, the red light overhead suddenly flashed on. This signaled that someone was coming in from outside. It was a lab technician who worked on the bottom floor. The very same woman infected by the mold at the beginning. Although Anya repeatedly asked what had happened, but the woman simply refused to speak. At the same time, Anya discovered the underground temperature reached as high as 200 degrees. How could she have survived without wearing a thermal suit? To further uncover the truth, Anya took a sample from the woman's back, specifically collecting the mold for laboratory analysis. She found that the mold was growing at a rate visible to the naked eye. It was an intracellular parasite. Clearly, this was the exact sample Anya had been searching for. Meanwhile, the engineer also managed to crack the elevator's passcode. Now the elevator could be started even without the key. Seeing this, Colonel Morozov ordered the woman to be sent to the surface for further research. But just at that moment, Major Sergei received a radio transmission. The squad previously sent to capture Dr. Grigoriev suddenly erupted into blood-curdling screams.
Gorov!
Fall back! Fall back!
Igorov!
I was hoping that you would all come back through the shaft. I was wrong.
Oh shit.
Again,
He's gonna blow up the whole shaft.
you left me no choice. I guess we will all stay forever.
The voice coming through the speaker was none other than Dr. Grigoriev's. To prevent the mold from spreading and infecting the people on the surface, he had taken the key in the first place. He was preparing to blow the entire facility to pieces, sealing it off for good. As soon as he finished speaking, a massive explosion rang out. The blast damaged the pressure pumps. If they didn't get out within 1 hour, everyone would be crushed to death by the pressure. Meanwhile, Anya and Sergei went to check on the woman's condition. They found the infirmary shrouded in pitch-black darkness. As they slowly stepped inside, they witnessed a truly horrific sight. The walls of the room were completely covered in fungi. The woman had fused entirely with the mold. She was pinned firmly to the floor. Massive pustules had broken out all over her back. They were writhing and pulsing as if they were breathing. But the most terrifying part was, the woman was still alive. She could even open her eyes and stare right at them. Seeing this, the colonel ignored Anya's safety. He ordered her to collect a sample immediately. However, the sight of those writhing pustules made Anya hesitate to make a move. Sergei stepped in to help when he saw her struggling, but he was suddenly ambushed by the fungi.
Bulgaria?
In an instant, the entire infirmary was overrun by the mold. Anya barely escaped by putting on her protective mask just in time. But just then, Dr. Kira's voice drifted in from nearby. She was still mindlessly repeating the test results. Anya followed the sound of her voice. Through the thick smoke and dust, Kira slowly emerged, but she had already been consumed by the fungus. Her body was mutating rapidly, with her own bones piercing through her skin. Seeing this, Anya scrambled to escape. She used a fire extinguisher to blast away the fungus at the door. With the engineer's help, she successfully made it out. Afterward, the team put on their protective suits and managed to rescue Major Sergei. But unfortunately, Major Sergei had already been infected by the fungus. His body was now beginning to undergo a gruesome transformation. Meanwhile, Anya discovered a way to fight the fungus. She called Colonel Morozov into the cold storage room. It turned out that the cold was the fungus's ultimate weakness.
Inside of a warm-blooded carrier, it can survive everything. But if a carrier dies in a cold environment, the parasite dies too.
It seemed the fungus could control human actions, driving the host to spread the fungal colonies for the sole purpose of reproduction. So Anya suggested bringing all the survivors back to the surface and then dispatching a medical team to provide treatment for Major Sergei. But Colonel Morozov replied that no other teams would be coming in because the base would be shut down indefinitely in 5 hours. Hearing those words, Anya was filled with doubt. If that's the case, then how are we supposed to get the fungus samples out of the base? Once it leaves a human host, the freezing cold outside will wipe the fungus out completely. Colonel Morozov didn't seem bothered at all. It turned out his plan was to weaponize the fungus to gain an undisputed military advantage. Since the fungus can't survive outside a human body, he planned to use Major Sergei as a living container to transport it to the surface. But Anya immediately pushed back against this.
There are people up there. You'll bring him right to the nest.
Just do it.
Colonel Morozov was obsessed and refused to listen. He didn't give a second thought to what would happen if the fungus leaked, which would bring disaster to the entire world. Anya had no other choice but to follow his orders. Everyone suited up in their thermal gear, getting ready to evacuate through the mineshaft walkway. But right at that moment, the team that had headed down to the 12,000-meter level sent another radio transmission. Blood-curdling screams echoed through the receiver, as if something was hunting them down. They desperately warned everyone not to open the shaft hatch, pleading with them to keep it closed no matter what. After a blood-curdling scream, the signal was completely cut off. It was clear the squad had met a grim fate, but they could not worry about that now. Colonel Morozov ordered everyone to evacuate up the mineshaft walkway. They first sent a small team ahead to scout the area. A short while later, they returned the way they came, but some of the members were badly injured. What is more, they discovered that the upward passage had already been sabotaged by the explosion Dr. Grigoriev caused, sealing it off completely. Without the elevator key in their possession, they were effectively trapped down there. Just at that moment, a figure slowly emerged from the darkness of the tunnel. It was a team member who had lost both of his hands. He stumbled toward the group, acting as if he were being controlled by something, before pulling out a dagger and ending his own life. No one knew what kind of horror he had encountered. It seemed there was something lurking nearby that had brutally attacked their squad. Sure enough, a second later, a violent pounding echoed from behind the iron door. Something was desperately trying to break in. With no other choice left, the group had to retreat back to elevator number 2. They set up defensive positions at the entrance. One of the soldiers steps forward to investigate, but he hears a cacophony of roars layered with countless voices. It doesn't sound human at all. It sounds more like a monster. Right at that moment, the doors to elevator number 2 slide open, but it's impossible to start without the key. But don't forget, Nikolai is a skilled engineer. Given a little time, he can bypass the system completely. But time is a luxury they don't have. The roars echoing through the tunnel are drawing closer. Major Sergei knows deep down his body won't make it to the surface. He decides to stay behind with 2 other soldiers to hold the line and buy the others some time. Following a blood-curdling scream, the rest of the team piles into the elevator. Meanwhile, the engineer successfully cracks the code. The elevator hums to life and begins its descent toward the 12,000-meter mark. It starts picking up speed rapidly. No one has any idea what's waiting for them next. They have no choice but to search for another way out. Finally, the elevator comes to a smooth stop at the bottom. The group has reached the deepest point of the facility. But the moment the doors slide open, they are left completely speechless by the sight. The entire research area has been frozen solid. Every inch of the room is covered in thick frost. This is clearly the result of Dr. Grigoriev's lockdown. Through a tape recorder found here, they finally learned exactly what kind of entity they were actually up against. Because of the extreme depth of the drill, they unearthed a fungus that doesn't belong on this earth. This fungus can hijack the nervous system and take complete control of the host's mind. It has even learned to fuse multiple bodies together just to maintain its body temperature. Just as they were talking, the engineer lit a flare and stumbled upon a horrific sight. The corpses of the researchers were completely fused with the fungus, frozen solid against the walls. As the group searched for an exit, they quickly realized that all the cooling systems had been destroyed. Without those cooling systems, their thermal suits were absolutely useless. The 200-degree heat outside would incinerate anyone within 5 minutes. Their only hope now was to find Dr. Grigoriev and get the elevator key to make it back to the surface. The colonel figured that since Dr. Grigoriev was severely wounded, he couldn't have made it very far. But the question was, who would brave the heat to find him? Seeing the situation, Anya stepped forward and volunteered to go. Anya volunteers for the mission. She decides to head out and search for him. As long as she makes it back within 5 minutes, she should be fine. But just as she's about to step out, Colonel Morozov stops her. He's had a change of heart and finally sees the bigger picture. He realizes Anya was right all along. This fungus belongs buried deep underground. Innocent people shouldn't be dragged into this catastrophe. As a military officer, it's his duty to take on this responsibility. With those words, he steps out into the heat, while Anya starts a 5-minute countdown. But as the seconds tick away, there's no sign of the colonel returning. It's clear that something has gone horribly wrong. Left with no other choice, Anya steps up once more. She rushes into the airlock, seals the hatch, and bravely charges into the blistering heat. Fortunately, the colonel managed to find the key. He's collapsed just a short distance from the airlock. Anya tries to pull the colonel back to safety, but he has already stopped breathing. There's nothing she can do. Anya had no choice but to grab the key. She turned and bolted back toward the isolation chamber, but the fogging on her mask made it impossible to see where she was going. Out of desperation, she was forced to rip it off. That was when she saw the true face of the fungus. It emitted a sinister red glow, writhing and pulsating incessantly. It was as if a pair of eyes were staring right back at Anya. She couldn't afford to linger, because the extreme heat was already turning her entire body a scorched red. Finally, Anya made it back inside the room. Her body was trembling uncontrollably from the severe burns. Suddenly, Pyotr approached them, brandishing an AK-47. He threatened Nikolai, demanding that he hand over the key. It turned out that after seeing the fungus, Pyotr was instantly consumed by greed. He wanted to bring the fungus back to the surface, to claim it as his own groundbreaking discovery, so the entire world would finally know his name. Seeing that Nikolai refused to give up the key, Pyotr didn't hesitate and fired 2 shots, hitting Nikolai right in the leg. After snatching the key, the 3 of them returned to the 6,000-meter level. But don't forget, they were still being hunted by an unknown monster. Pyotr forced the 2 of them to take the lead and scout the way, but because of his leg injury, Nikolai was unable to walk. This left Anya with no choice but to head out and investigate alone. Anya makes her way through the pitch-black corridor. She eventually reaches the entrance of elevator number 1. Pyotr intends to finish Anya off right then and there. But just as he is about to pull the trigger, he is suddenly ambushed by the creature. The monster is a grotesque fusion of countless human bodies. Their limbs are twisted and mangled together, with their flesh fused into a single horrific mass. It lets out a never-ending, agonizing roar. Pyotr is swallowed whole in an instant. Seeing this, Anya thinks fast to save herself. She ducks into a nearby cold storage room. She realizes that the freezing cold is her only hope for survival. Sure enough, the creature is kept at bay by the cold, and it does not dare to step inside. However, if she stays in there for too long, Anya will eventually freeze to death. In a desperate move, she spots a bucket of ice nearby. She immediately strips off her clothes and douses herself in the freezing water. Her entire body instantly goes numb and stiff from the cold. Her body temperature plummets to the absolute limit. When she finally steps back outside, the monster completely ignores her. Realizing her plan worked, Anya summons her courage and creeps directly underneath the creature. She risks everything to snatch the key still hanging from Pyotr's remains. Then she makes a quick getaway. She rushes back to help the injured Nikolai. The two of them scrambled toward the ascending elevator, but along the way, the creature sensed their body heat and smashed right through the wall. Anya tossed the key to Nikolai while she drew the monster's attention away. She struggled with all her might, dashing through the narrow corridor, and managed to wedge the monster inside. Seizing the moment, she rushed to join Nikolai inside the elevator. But even after inserting the key, the elevator doors wouldn't close because of the explosion damage. Meanwhile, the creature was closing in, step by step. At the 11th hour, the elevator doors finally slid shut. The two of them had narrowly escaped death. However, right at that moment, Sergei's voice drifted over from the side. Looking down, they saw that he had completely merged with the fungus. He was now in a state of symbiosis. Witnessing this, Anya realized she couldn't allow the elevator to reach the surface. If she did, the entire world would be consumed by the fungus. She decided to abandon her escape and prepared to enter the wrong password 3 times to send the elevator plummeting to the bottom. But Nikolai vehemently objected. After all, he wasn't about to throw away the escape he had fought so hard for. He couldn't just give up like this. He grabbed Anya's hand with a firm grip and threw her violently to the side. The two of them began to scuffle on the floor. But Anya was no match for Nikolai's brute strength. She was pinned down as he squeezed his hands around her throat. Just as she was on the verge of suffocating, Sergei endured the agony and ripped his mutated arm from the floor. He lunged forward and drove it straight into Nikolai's neck. Anya was finally saved from his grip. She even leaned in and gave the infected Sergei a final kiss. Oh boy, talk about asking for an infection. Sure enough, the fungus inside Sergei began to release its spores. Anya inhaled them deep into her lungs, becoming the next host for the parasite. Clinging to her last shred of consciousness, she immediately reached for the elevator's descent switch. But things didn't go as planned. The elevator was being remotely controlled from above. Anya tried to enter the wrong code to crash the elevator, but the fungus had already begun to take over her mind. She slowly drifted into unconsciousness. By the time Anya opened her eyes again, she had already reached the surface. To prevent the world from facing total destruction, she snatched a grenade from one of the soldiers. She threatened them to stop the vehicle, reenacting the exact scene she witnessed when she first arrived. With a deafening explosion, and that is where the story ends.